We have some participants here, and they are willing to share what they experienced and what they went through and what a great time they had. So let's welcome up Marina, our first person, Marina.
So, trying to figure out how to start. I'm never very good at starting. My testimony is a couple things. It's based on the workshop and I guess where I've been since then. And for me, the biggest word when I think of kind of what I want to share and what this last month has been about for me has been trust. And everything that entails. It's such a kind of a broad word, I guess, that we use for trusting other people, trusting ourselves, trusting God, and I think we overuse it in a lot of different contexts. But for me, this whole last month has been about finding what that really means to me. So to start with, I guess we will go back to the beginning of the workshop. I guess sometime in October, November, we started thinking about the workshop, and we started planning for that, and Jean asked what I wanted to do, and I said, I'd love to work with activities, maybe. It was something I'd never done. I've tried different things, and I guess I wanted to do something different and something that could challenge me. And but I said as long as I was working with other people, as long as I was working with a team. And so Natsu and I did activities. And so long story short, all the way working up to the workshop, I was just like, oh, is this gonna go right? I'm worrying about this, and is that going to go right? And just a lot of me doing a lot in my head of worrying about things and just wanting it to be right, wanting it to go well, and not knowing if I could do that. If I could make sure that kids had a good time, which is ridiculous because no matter what, they can always play cards with one another, which is what they did. But it's something that, it mattered a lot to me. And so we get to the workshop, and the first day was complete chaos in my head. If you're a participant, you're kind of just smiling because that first day we were just figuring everything out. There was a lot of things that was going on. We had 10 extra participants, I think, than we were expecting. So it went from 38 to 50 almost. And in terms of supplies, because I had done that, I was worrying about that. We didn't have a cook. And so we're okay, we're all just gonna juggle and go in the kitchen whenever we can. And I had no trust in that. I was no, we cannot do that. The kitchen needs a person. It's a lot of work and all these things. And then at the same time we were doing teams, and I was thinking about this activity we were supposed to do the next day. And this activity was kind of, at least in my mind, the biggest one in terms of coordination. And I had nothing planned for it in terms of decision making. And so at the end of the day, I was on the verge of a mental breakdown. If you ask Gene, you probably know. And he just sat down with me for a second, and we worked it out in terms of schedule-wise, what we were going to be doing. And so I felt a little better, but still like my chest and just me as a person, I was stressed and scared at the same time. And so if you've ever felt that, it's your stomach and it's your chest. So it's everything in your body is just I'm uncomfortable right now, I don't know what to do. And I didn't even know why, really, everything around me was okay. We could figure it out, right? I just was worried about it. And all these things were playing in my head. And so, needless to say, that night, the very first night, was honestly one of the worst nights of sleep I've ever had. I just sat in my bed and I was thinking about everything that I should be planning or something. And apparently I thought this would be really productive. Apparently I thought it would be very productive to think about this, I would actually figure something out. But obviously it doesn't work that way. You don't decide anything when you're worrying about it in your bed at night. And I ended up, it just sort of phased into dreamland where you just imagine everything 10 times worse. And so all my dreams were like participants running away or something. I don't know, it was like all these random things that were completely ridiculous. And so I woke up the next day, and we decided that I would actually lead one of the activities as part of the 2-hour bigger activity I was worried about. And I was like worried about that because if I'm doing an activity, who's going to make sure the time goes right, you know? Or at least so I said. But I think really I was just kind of nervous about really being there in that space with them, interacting with them. And so the activity itself, it ended up changing a lot for me in terms of the whole workshop. I didn't realize it would, but looking back it did. So it was an activity about people showing their genuine selves. Like, if you really knew who I was, this is what I would tell you, you know, not just the normal everyday, hi, I like the color yellow or something. It's like, this is the feelings I feel, and these are what I think about. And so I was kind of worried about that. I was like, oh, I hope I create the right environment for them so that they feel open to share, and I hope they get this out of it, and I hope, you know, they get that out of it, and all these things that I wanted them to get out of it. And after the very first round of people, their team leader, who was doing it with them, came up to me before they left, and he said, like, oh, and at the end, you know, they ended up being able to share something. I was like, okay, good, they got something out of it, or something. And he came up to me and he said, you know, Marina, what if they, you know, they just didn't do it? Like, what if they didn't do it? And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, it would have been okay if they hadn't done it. Like, if it didn't work out, it would have been okay. And he was just like, you seemed so tense, and it was honestly weird to see you like that. And I was like, in my head, I was like, defense, like, you don't know. No, I wasn't. I was fine. I was creating the atmosphere, and I was I was completely just like not really listening, I guess, to what he was saying. And then like a minute later after he left, I was thinking about it, and I was like, honestly, he was right. I mean, yes, they did it, and yes, they probably got something out of it. But in a way, me worrying about it, being anxious about it, and sort of tensing up about wanting it to go well, it was exactly what was limiting me. And it was becoming the problem in a way. Me worrying about what could go wrong or what I should do right was what was limiting me. And I feel like it's like that a lot, like so many contexts of life. I mean, have you ever worried so much about what you were going to say and how you would look to somebody else that you ended up coming off really weird? Story of my life. But you worried so much about what was the right thing that you wanted to convey that you actually couldn't even convey it just because you were spending all your time thinking about that and the possible scenarios that you were on actually just focusing on what you really cared about, which is maybe serving somebody or doing something you're passionate about. So for the rest of the workshop, it actually went a lot better for me. Like, I found myself when activities were really, we didn't know how it would go or how they would take it. I was like, it's okay, like they're gonna get something different out of it. And it's okay if they don't get exactly what I think they should get out of it, you know? And that was the biggest thing, is this idea of what I thought other people needed to get in a way, which is this whole theme for the whole week was really letting them have their experience, but I didn't even realize how I was worrying about it and how I was doing it unconsciously. And but after that, it was a lot better in terms of the workshop. Like, I don't know, I felt like I could just trust that I would, you know, do okay, and I could trust other people. There's not just me, everybody in terms of staff had to do so much trusting one another in the kitchen, and in doing activities, and in doing all these things we really didn't sign up to do, but everybody was so ready and willing to do it, even if they'd never done it before. And because of that, and because I feel like as a staff, we were able to trust a lot more after the first day or so. It went a lot more smoothly, and sometimes that's all it is. because you really can't control everything. You can never control everything. And so that was the whole workshop, was just me kind of realizing that, trusting myself, trusting other people, and just really trusting God that no matter what, he would be able to work in the environment as long as we were creating just an honest place where people could get whatever they wanted out of it. So really that was the workshop for me. And I don't know, I kind of feel like it extends though into the last couple of weeks, just because after that, going into the New Year's, I don't know, we just got off the workshop, so I don't know how that affected it or not, but going into the new year when I was thinking of what I wanted, I suppose, or I guess even just if I wanted goals, I was getting this anxiety again, and just like, I guess just feeling of uncertainty, or that there's so many possibilities, and it's a good problem, right? There's so many possibilities. But there's actually a thing, I was reading about it yesterday, but there's actually a thing called like decision paralysis, where you have so many options in terms of what you could do that it's actually impossible to make a decision in terms of what you want for goals or what you want in life. For me, it was a lot of different things. So it was funny when I read about that yesterday, it was like for school. But today, it's actually harder than ever, I feel like, to make decisions because there's so much information and data, you actually get completely overwhelmed. And again, like all this anxiety and worry about like what could happen if you don't pick the right choice, if you don't do the right thing in terms of your career or your family. So I think that was what was on my mind a lot after New Year's, is just thinking about that. And at some point I was just like feeling completely kind of pent up, I guess, in energy, and not really sure what I was doing, I guess. I just felt very unclear, just very unclear. So I went on like a walk. It was like a prayer meditation walk. It was just basically just an excuse for me to get out of my house with the 13 plus people. And that's actually been a lot, I'm realizing a lot more. It's been helping me just to take that time. And I was just thinking about all of that and why I felt so afraid in a way, afraid of what's to happen in this year and everything going into it, and really what I wanted. And I was just kind of talking to myself, like asking God, like, what can I do to be more clear? What do I need to do? And towards the end of my walk, I just thought about the workshop. It just came up really strong in my head. And along with the word of just like trust, like Marina, you just need to really trust that you can do it. My problem is that I'll be like, yeah, God, I trust that you can help me, but I don't really trust myself that I can help you when the time is right. I feel like especially in our church we do that where we have to take responsibility, right? And we have to take ownership. So I'm like, okay, I need to know when I need to do something. So how will I know when I need to take responsibility for something, or if this is the right path? And then once again, I was just like, you just have to trust that you'll know yourself, and you'll know yourself well enough. And it just reminded me a lot of the workshop and how much that same thing was happening in my own life. Like, it was really what I'm doing right now in terms of thinking about my life. And so, yeah, it made me realize that oftentimes it's the anxiety and it's the worrying that we do that actually limits us in many ways. Like, we don't want to trust because we want to be able to control the situation. We want to be able to control like what's going to happen in our life. And so we don't trust other people to do things, or we don't really trust, either God or even yourself to quite do things. But at least for me, that was what was limiting me. Like the worrying about things and like the possible situations is really what was kind of cutting off the ability to be able to see what was really important. Because you can't just tell somebody like, oh, stop worrying about that. Like, if you haven't done that, it doesn't work. Then they start worrying about how they shouldn't be worrying. Yeah, it's a terrible cycle. So really, you can't tell somebody like to stop having anxiety or to not worry about something. But what I've found for myself, instead of like telling myself to stop thinking about this, because it's like thinking of an elephant. The second you tell yourself to not think about it, it's going to be in the front of your head. Instead of focusing on that, for me, it's been a lot more of just trying to focus on the opposite, like affirmation of, okay, what is really important? What's important in my decision making is that I'm doing what I really am passionate about, or that I am serving someone else. And then as long as my decisions are lining up with that, like my why, then it's okay, you know? I know that I'm making right decisions. So yeah, and then it just, for me, that all ends up going back to just being able to trust that I know myself well enough to know my whys, but just as important is that I can trust other people that they're going to be able to follow their whys, and their why for what they do is going to be totally different than mine for what they want to get out of an experience like the workshop. Like what they need to get could be totally different than my expectation of what they need to get. And so, yeah, that is kind of where I've been at with that, and that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
So for the most part, or the first day at least for the workshop for Marina and I, it was kind of stressful, and like it was just all over the place, and we were worrying about how the cooks were going to cook, and whether we had enough food or not, and whether everybody was getting fed, and you know how activities were going to go, and if we gave them, you know, made sure that we gave them enough education, not too much, not too little, made sure that they understood. And that was the thing with John and I. We were team leaders, and this is my first year being a team leader for a winter workshop. And so it's just like everything's like coming at me all at once, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, dude. And like, cause John and I had like the littlest kids or whatever, the little kids, the youngest kids, like it was kind of hard for them sometimes to understand like what was going on. It's like, so guys, what's going on? And like for the first few days, they're like kind of quiet, and like nothing, like okay. but then they got more, they got better, and they got less shy, and they opened themselves up more, which was good. And I think having the activities was good. And at night, the first night when I was sleeping, I was more worried about the lizards trying to get in my sleeping bag than what was going on. I don't know, but anyways, it went really smooth, and I had a really great time. I was really exhausted, so exhausted. I was like, I was ready for this to be over, and my legs were shot. And what I didn't understand was, like, every night we had like a meeting. And it would go from like 10 o'clock to like 12 o'clock or like 1 o'clock sometimes in the morning. And like these kids would stay up and they were playing Montanage in the cabins. It's just like, why? It's like you guys have the extra opportunity to get like 3 extra hours of sleep, and I can only get like 6 or 7. It's like, why? Anyways, it's just a lot of things. You appreciate sleep as the older you get, I guess. But anyways, so yeah, it's kind of fun. Anyways, so we have 4 more speakers, and our next person who's going to give testimony is Shenna. So please welcome up Shenna.
Good morning. I assure you, as a first participant, the staff had it a lot more together than it seemed. So on the face, they were cool, you know. So it was like 3 full days, 2 half days. And I think it was a really good opportunity to see more people that I met once or twice before, but never really got to know them more. There was still like this barrier with them. So I feel like this workshop, I was able to connect deeper with like acquaintances, friends I made. So and there was this particular activity. There were 2 actually. One where you just mingled around with different tables and questions. just any questions like who is God, who is he to you, what is the blessing, just so many different questions about spirituality, religion, and going around it made me realize how many questions I never asked. Like, oh wow, I just blindly accepted and never even questioned these things. So yeah, and I think people's spirituality is a lot more stronger if they answer those questions than if they ever, whatever the answer is, it's a lot stronger than if they had just blindly accepted it and never questioned it. So yeah, it made me think a lot more about it. Even still, like I don't even have those answers. But yeah, and there was another activity on the fun side, like bubble soccer. That's where you go inside like this huge blown up balloon, I guess, that has springs in it, and so basically really bouncy. And it's in this huge field, and yeah, it's basically you play soccer inside these bubbles, and you smash against each other, and you just completely fly off. So yeah, that was probably the highlight of my workshop. Yeah. And the next day, your legs are dying. So. Yeah, and yeah, it was really good to just see people, I guess, connect more. I don't know how. It was just, without even realizing it, you were already connecting. There was, for Marina's activity she was explaining, you basically write a letter about, if you knew me, what would you see? Or if you really knew me, you'd know this about me. So I was writing it, and I didn't even realize, I would be telling people afterward, in the group. So everybody was making their own letter, and I was just, being really honest. And it was just, for myself. And then I come back into the group, and Marina's like, okay, you guys can read them now. I'm like, what? I just made this for myself. So yeah, I just decided, whatever, I'll just read it. And yeah, it was interesting to do that, without even realizing it, I had just been really honest, without even worrying about what they would think. Because I wasn't even worrying about what they would think, because I didn't think I would share it with them anyway. So I was but I'm okay, so I'll just share it with them. And it was really good, because I felt like I could be more connected with my team members and stuff like that. So. And for them as well. They didn't realize it. So yeah. And that's it. So, yeah.
Bubble soccer, that was really intense. It was you're just in a ball, and you only had two holes, one on the top and one on the bottom to breathe out, and you were you had this much space to breathe, and it was getting hot. You had these straps you had to put on, and you had these handles, and after 10 minutes, everybody started slowing down. You didn't see as many people bumping into each other, but I think I was the biggest guy playing bubble ball, so I was dominating everybody. So that was really fun. Knocking everybody over. And but yeah, it was really good seeing them connect. Like I said, they were a bit shy the first day, but then they were connecting more, and through the activities and through all the lectures and talks and everything. So yeah, and it was really worth it seeing them, even though how tired I was on the inside, and mentally and physically, how tired I was. It was just so worth it to see them, have a good time and stuff like that. So yeah, it was really good. I was happy to see that, and it was definitely worth it. So yeah, and our next speaker is Yunmi. So let's welcome up Yunmi.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
So I wanted to talk about what the workshop was about. It was Star Wars themed, and it was about unlocking the Force, harnessing the Force, and then using the Force. Does anyone want to guess what the Force meant in context of the workshop? It's love. Not that surprising. And so, in the beginning, some of the activities I didn't really take them seriously because I felt like some of them I've already done before. But as the days went on, I realized that I was being really reflective of how the year went and my character, and yeah, I thought it was really worth it. Like, the new year, we burned things that we regret, and we made resolutions for what we wanted to do and accomplish this year. And if I stayed at home, I probably wouldn't have done any of those stuff. I would probably be sleeping and doing nothing. So it was a good way to end the new year, or the 2015, and open up 2016. I also, this was one of the few experiences that I got to meet second gen from different states, and it was really great. There was an African American kid who is fluent in Korean. I was just like, wow. It's impressive. And I like the diversity, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Uni. Yeah, so our next talker, our next speaker, is actually Ayaka, and she's went to a workshop in Maryland, so I don't know what went on there. I heard last year, like, they made, like, people doing, like, going ice water, and yeah, I think I'm glad I went to the Georgia one. Anyway, so yeah, let's welcome up Ayaka.
I went to a winter workshop at Maryland. At Maryland. So it was a 6-day workshop. The whole theme was I know my roots, and it takes back where True Father was at Korea, and he got out of North Korea, and then went to America, and then he started out like the church and stuff. So I'm gonna summarize this because it's all in 6 days, and I'm not. If you're gonna get bored, it might take a month after explaining. But so the first day, actually before the first day, I was really sick at the Pearson house, and I had a fever, and I know that without any medication or medicine, I wouldn't survive the whole workshop for 6 days. And my mom was like, I guess we have to go back to, we were at Virginia at that time, so I guess we had to go back 4 hours to Tennessee. My dad's like, well, we'll see about it. And then I took some like Advils, or I ate pear. I ate really healthy that day. So the Advil was kicking in when we were like picking up people from the Virginia members, and then we were meeting at this place where we just stuff ourselves in a huge van. And my fever got down by that time, but I was still like coughing. I was really disgusting. And the first day that we did, that's the second day. I didn't expect anything, but we came into a group and we started out fundraising. I was like, yay. I hated fundraising. Well, before I even experienced this kind of fundraising, at school, you know, like, hey, cookie fundraising, go door to door, don't talk to strangers. But this fundraising was kind of like, this is how True Father did it. This is like deep stuff. So, we got these weird items that the price doesn't even make sense. So, I was kind of like, does this even cost $20? And we had these like weird metallic necklaces. They call snake necklaces. And we have this like really small aluminum pictures that doesn't even cost $15. So it was a struggle when I first fundraised. And we partnered up with Boy and Girl, so we like know each other, I guess. And I was partnered up with this, his name is Luke, and he had a bunch of experience with fundraising. He went to Boy Scout, so he was a pro at like talking to people. He had this really good charisma. I was like, whoa. And then I started out fundraising, didn't end well. Like the people, I was like really hoping to meet like really nice people, but I ended up meeting like really mean. So I was like, oh my gosh, these people, they hurt my feelings. Gosh. So my friend Luke, he's like, you have to introduce yourself. And then I asked him, but they're strangers and you're not supposed to do that, right? So he's like, just do it. You know, it works. And then I did it, and then finally we got like money. And then we actually sold some stuff, but not really. It's more like donations, and we got to about $35.50. It was really nice. And this teach me how to get out of my comfort zone. So that was a great experience. We actually split our group in half. So one went to the neighborhood's houses, and then I and my partner went to the parking lot. The parking lot was so much better than the houses because the house they don't open the door. So I'm like, is this how it's supposed to be? I mean, should I knock the door again? I don't know. So I realized throughout the parking lot fundraising that the people who have dogs are a lot nicer. And yeah. So that went on to the second day. And the second day we went again, but we weren't like, yay. So it was kind of torture for people who have like, who are really shy. So I won't judge them, but I mean, yeah, I was terrified, and gosh, I'm glad it was over. And then finally we went to our original location where our workshop and our dorms were, and then Melissa, on the second day, she lectured us about how she met True Mother. And we know that we know a lot about True Father and stuff, but we don't actually know what, more likely, we don't really know about True Mother. So she talked about like True Mother, and it was this unexpected thing that she went to this, I guess, workshop, and then suddenly you expect True Mother serving out like luxurious food and stuff, but it ended up having hamburgers and pizza. So that was really interesting. And then True Mother actually laughs. She actually is funny. She's a human being. Like, oh my gosh. It was kind of crazy. And then Owen Pearson, he also lectured about his experience with True Father, and he got yelled at. And then he was like, oh my god, this is the worst thing ever. True Father yelled at me. And then he's like, putting this perspective, it's like, wait a minute, he could be yelling at me at this sort of reason. And it was really cool. And then we wrote our reflection about true parents and like how much we know about it. And to be honest, I don't even know much about them. I thought they were kind of like grandparents to me. I don't know. And then we went to this prayer walk, which was pretty deep and it was awesome. Okay, third day. What was this about? It's about how the lecture of, you know how the Bible is? It's kind of like hard and it kind of portrays different meanings, and then you can't always get the right answer. So we've done a lot of activity by trusting people, and we blindfold each other, and we're trying to like create a path by using cardboard, and everything was grass with lava. And then I guess this portrays Jesus guiding these people who doesn't even know what they're doing. So it took like 20 minutes, well, it felt like an hour. And we built ourselves a human pyramid, and then it's like, great, we've done that. But then our team leader is like, okay, now do it again, but you have to walk 3 steps in a pyramid form. I'm like, is that even possible? So, but we actually did it, and we didn't get cuts and bruises, so that was good. And we got a lecture about true love, that true love is
not just a feeling, but you have to make action for it. And there's this girl named Phoebe. She's a staff member. She lectures about Jesus and the difference between Christianity and Unificationism. And I didn't know there were like two different things. I thought it was just Christian, since it was kind of church. I don't know. So I learned a lot of things about it. So I'm gonna give you a couple. So Christianity, they're like, you know, the fallen world. Christian people is like, we're the fallen people. We can't be helped. I guess we'll just accept this fate that we're just bad people. But then unificationists is like, we're just incomplete. We can grow and we can strive to be better, kind of thing. So that's one of the points. And more about my notes. And then, okay, we have this another activity about like, you know, Bible's hard. And we had this staff member describing a picture of, for example, a sheep. And then they say, without drawing it out, they have to explain how to draw a sheep. Which was easy because you can just say a cloud shape with black head and black circles or something like that. But then when you say a goat, that's kind of hard to explain a picture of it. And then people got like these wacko rectangle, weird abstract pictures. And we understand how the Bible works, that it can't be an easy thing to understand. And the fourth day was kind of like knowing our parents and the struggles that they went through, the sacrifice they went through, and it was such a deep meaning for it. And we also went to this activity, and we had to choose a category, and my group chose the holy days. So we learned about the days of the holy days, like restoring to God, Parents' Day, the anniversary, and then back to the sacrifice of the parent. The one story that really struck me is where one of the parent has to choose either staying with their dog or going out there with the church. And at the end, she had to leave her dog, but then she leave it to this owner, which she's super good with the dogs. And after like however years, the same owner called her and was like, hey, I still have your dog. And that owner is like, oh my God, really? And it was such a touching moment. And, okay. So on the fourth day, there's like this girl and boy night. So that's when we actually got really close to the girls and really, the boys got really close to the boys. And it's kind of like a secretive thing, so we can't really say anything. But I'm going to say that it's super personal, and it's like a great experience. It kind of like opens your treasure box that, like what you've been holding for so long and you can't tell anybody, now you can tell. And it's like, ah. And then, so that was nice, and it was pretty intense. I mean, we did this like really intense activity that that made everything that our body moves, and it was dying. Like, the activity was intense. And oh yeah, for Eric about the water thing, so on the second day, we did this punishment that we had to do this requisite of writing down answers for these 3 questions. And if you don't turn them in on the due date, you'll get a punishment during the workshop. And it was just one day, and it just took 1 hour probably. No biggie. And I actually experienced the punishment last year. It was tremendously painful. Like, I had to run, I had to like do push-up, planks. Gosh, I was like a bodybuilder. And I had no muscle at the end, so that was a bummer, but we did like suicide, it was just crazy. I know. I know. And then at the very end, our staff member who was doing the punishment, we had to take off her socks, and she was just like, what's going on? What's more? And then we see this like lake over there, and then just like go down to your feet or up to your shin and stay there for 5 minutes praying. And that was your punishment. And that was like the icing on the cake for your punishment. And I thought my feet were gonna fall off after that. It was super cold. Alright, yeah, that was really bad. And then we had to walk all the way to the doors to wash off our stuff, which was also painful because I had like cuts and bruises. It was okay. Back to my workshop. The 5th day was like, okay, you know how little, not little, but like the less children, how they have a dark secret with their parents, and their relationships, some of them are not great, like really bad. And some kids are suffering when they were little, that their parents were super strict or super mean or just, I don't know, it's really hard to understand because I came from a parent that was very loving, happy, like nothing that was wrong, but then I can't believe that other parents were just so mean to their kids. So, I mean, they're so mean. And to make it a little bit more serious, we had to make a lecture for ourselves to get out of our comfort zone, and we had to talk about our family situation. And a lot of kids were just crying. They were just so touched. They were holding this suffering that they couldn't tell anybody except their siblings, because their siblings know what's going on. And I never knew that. Like, you can't even judge people. Even though they have like a really bad attitude, they could have a dark past. So that was one thing that really struck me. And there was one kid who had very abusive parents, but all he wanted to do was make his parents happy, which he played the piano for his mom in order for his mom to be happy. But he also helped his dad at like a sushi or some kind of restaurant, and in order to make his dad's dreams come true, that makes him happy. And he's torn apart that right now he's old enough to be thinking about careers, and his health is getting bad, and he really wants to achieve his career job, his dream job, and he's at the situation, should I help my dad or should I pursue my hobby as a pianist? And he's stuck at this road that whatever he thinks, he can't go back kind of thing. So I hope that he can figure it out. I'm not really good at these things. So on the 6th day, okay, the last day, so you guys can relax a bit. It was about commitment. You say, okay, for New Year's, I'll make a goal. I'll make a resolution. But what does that mean to you? Nothing really, right? It's like, I'll do it later, maybe a week, don't worry, I'll get back to it, kind of thing. But when you say commitment, that means you're full on committing to your goal, not goals, but what you really want to do. So this is like more than just a goal. And we did this really intense activity where somebody tied a rope on this really thick tree, and there's a rope across the grass, and then you write what your commitment was, and you paste it on the tree, and then you gather about 6 people. So can I have like 2 people up here so I can show them what they were? Yeah, all right. So get your hands out. Don't worry, just be great. So you grab like that, you grab like this, and then you're like right here. Good job. So okay, and then the rope is right there, and then somebody who putting a commitment on the tree. They hold this rope and then they yell out their commitment and they literally just do this. And you guys are the wall of what's against your commitment. So but it's just like a bittersweet kind of thing. It's like, I can't believe it takes so much work just for them to commit something when they're such good people. And it was really a deep relationship, and people started tearing and crying. Basically, this whole workshop was making me dehydrated because I was crying so much. And we couldn't have a water bottle with us, so I was basically thirsty the whole way around. And after that moment, that we realized we're not just a church member, we're a family, we're younger sisters. And if times are tough, we let it out to our family members. And remember that you're not alone when you're suffering. Your father might not have the same struggle as you, but you might have the same struggle as other blessed children. So, and also the Alaskan, I forgot to tell you guys, but the Alaskan people came over because the true mother used her money to pay the plane tickets to the workshop. So that was cool. And yeah, and I learned a lot about Alaska, that it's not just snow in there and igloos. There's actually but yeah, and there's more to it, but this is just out of a nutshell. So yeah, I'm done.
If you think you had it bad with fundraising, First Gen, just ask any of them about a fundraising story. I'm sure they have some crazy fundraising story. I was on BTA for like 2 months, and I was with Aunt Jerry Miles. She's crazy. Like it's just so, like we were walking one time down the street, and like there's this one guy and his pants were like sagging, and he's like looking back, and I'm like, oh God, Aunt Jerry, don't say anything. She goes, pants are hanging low, baby. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like I am not with you right now. And she's just like so embarrassed, but she's really funny and she's really great at times. And with my fundraising, I was the same way with fundraising. Like there was people that I ran into that weren't in such good moods, and like it was just I really didn't like it when I went into a store or some business place or whatever, or even just a person, and as soon as you walk up to them and they see that you're trying to sell them something, and they like just shut you down like right away. They're like, oh nope, sorry, nope, can't do it, I'm busy, or no thanks, and like or they just completely ignore you. But I got used to that kind of fast. And one thing happened, we usually have partners for fundraising, and I had this Japanese kid. He actually has brothers that live in Maryland, but he lives in Japan. So he was coming to BTA from Japan. His English wasn't so good, so when he was fundraising, he kind of had a hard time. He's like we would fundraise with the world's finest chocolates. He goes, hello, we're fundraising with the world's finest chocolates, and like, Marco, you gotta speak more clearly. Like they don't understand you. They're like, what? What are you selling? And they kind of sometimes they get scared like that. I'm like, what is he? Who is this guy? And so I had to like clear it up. I was like, yeah, we're selling chocolates for BTA, and it's a fundraiser and to help us out. And one time we went in this. We were in Texas actually. We went to Texas when we were fundraising, and we went to Church's Chicken. And there's this really nice black lady inside, and it was actually near Valentine's Day. And Marco goes inside. He's like, "Oh, I love chicken." And he's like, "I love American chicken." I was like, "Okay, so you want to do this?" He's like, "Yeah." He goes up to the lady. He goes like, "Hi, how are you doing? We're selling roses." He got better, so he's like, "Hi, how are you doing? We're selling these roses and happy Valentine's Day." And he's like, "Do you want to get one for your boyfriend or your husband?" And she goes, "I have a girlfriend." He's like, and he's just like. He's like so confused. He was like, he looks at me and he's like, wait, and that just kind of like ruined his whole fundraising thing for quite some time. So I did most of the speaking after that. And then we had a little talk after. I was like, Marco, this is America, and people are different. And anyways, I just told him a little bit about that on the side. He's like, yeah, okay. He's like, he's a little scarred afterward. Anyways, so yeah, that was really good, and yeah, that was my fundraising experience, and wow, yeah, I mean, yeah, I can tell you more, but anyways, but yeah, I don't think I'll be going to the Maryland workshop anytime soon. Sounds really intense. I don't know if I can do that.
Lots of crying.
Yeah, I don't want to being dehydrated of my tears. Drinking I have to like make a cup of tears just to drink it, just to get rehydrated. Anyways, okay, so our next speaker is Gene, and he went to the Winter Workshop in Georgia, but he recently went to a leadership workshop in Las Vegas. So yeah, let's welcome up Gene.
Yeah, so I went to, is this reverberating? Okay, then it just sounds like that up here. So I went to the Youth Pastors Retreat in Las Vegas. And, but before, I just want to share just a little glimpse of that, right? And I partly want to do that because my plane was half funded by the Triangle community, and I feel like, I wanted to be able to give back, like, this is what my experience was, right? But first I wanted to say thank you to all the people who talked about the Winter Workshop, because my experience of that was that was a mess and a miracle, right? And it was great. So and Maryland's workshops have a really good reputation of being a really profound experience. So thanks, Ayaka, for sharing that. And so I wanted to. So this is going to be just a really short sharing. But I actually am looking at stepping down as youth pastor. And it's because I'm going to graduate after this semester. And so I probably will not be in the area. And that's just what it's looking like. And it's actually all very new. I'm looking at doing a program called Teach for America. And this is all like really recent, right? So it's kind of, my career changes are changing. And so it's having me reflect on my experience of being a youth pastor, because I've technically been the youth pastor for 4 years. I say that I've been the youth pastor for about 1.5 years, because the first 2.5 years, I really feel like I didn't do anything, right? Now, that's not necessarily true. I think we had a winter workshop, and we did a couple other things. But my experience of it was, I was kind of offered this opportunity to be the youth pastor, right? Before me, many of you know, Lucy Popp was the youth pastor, and she was looking to step down, and she asked me. And I kind of didn't want to do it, actually. But I kind of didn't want her to be stuck in it, and I kind of thought maybe I could work it out, and maybe this is in line with what I'm passionate about. So I said yes, I'll be the youth pastor. For how long? Indefinitely, right? So I became the youth pastor, and it was really like the biggest struggle that I was creating for myself, right? Because I wouldn't do anything, and then I had these expectations of the community's expectations of what I should be doing, and I wasn't fulfilling on those expectations, so I felt really bad about it. And when I felt bad about it, I really didn't feel like doing anything. So I ended up not doing anything, and then feeling bad about it, and then not doing anything, like more of that. And so I have it that I really like suffered through that, right? And what really made the difference was two things. Marina came back from NGA, and we kind of became a team, so we decided to take it on together as co-pastors. And then a national youth ministry got created where around the nation there are youth pastors, and I'm on a monthly call with them. And so our youth ministry has actually been thriving, and even though there's some communities where they meet every week, and we don't do that. They're like huge communities with like 200 people. but the amount of activity that's been going on has been a lot. And I give that credit to two things. And it's being the accountability of having a structure. And so why am I sharing that? Because I know we had a lot of testimonies today, so I wanted to give a little bit of the sermon piece in terms of having a point, right? That's really clear. And the point for me is having a structure. So when I had to report to a national youth ministry, and the national youth pastor, you know, I connected to her, and she's really an extraordinary human being. And it's kind of embarrassing for the reports to be, hey, this is North Carolina's youth ministry, and we did nothing for the month. And then hearing everyone else's, what they're doing, and, you know, it's like, wow, like, you know, Nebraska's doing that, and California's doing that. And it was actually, like, really inspiring for me to hear about what other communities are doing, and then to say, hey, you know, we can do that too. And so that monthly report had me accountable to creating something every month, right? The other thing was that me and Marina would call each other once a week for 30 minutes, just 30 minutes. But that's where everything happened, right? Anything related to youth ministry anywhere that happened in this area for the last year and a half has been created from a 30-minute phone call, pretty much. That's where we decided, you know, well, Marina's been sending out newsletters. We decided, you know, we'll do a youth service. We'll host a workshop here. We'll coordinate the winter workshop here. And everything got created out of this 30-minute phone call, right? Before that 30-minute phone call, what there was an hour slot in my Google Calendar that said youth ministry. And I would proceed to look at it every Sunday and be like, nah, I'm going to do homework during that time. Or I'm going to, like, take a nap. Or something. And it's been in my calendar every week, you know, 3 years ago. And I never once honored that, you know, time block, right? So now that I'm honoring that we have 30 minutes every week for youth ministry, things are, okay, I thought that was just me, but yeah, okay, thank you, Mr. Ishida. So accountability has made a huge difference, and it's not like I look forward to our phone calls all the time, like, oh, let's talk about youth ministry when I'm in the middle of homework, right? But when I'm on the phone call, it's just 30 minutes, and it makes a world of difference, and that's where everything happens. And so for me, it gets me to think about my life, and what is it that I'm committed to, like Ayaka said, and what is it that I want to do, and what is my structure that has me do that, right? It's like a very practical, simple thing. But with that structure, it made all the difference. And honoring that time block in my schedule, like this is my time block. So the question is what is it that all of us are committed to, and then what's our structure that actually has us accountable to that? You know, whether it's, you know, your spouse, or really honoring that space in your calendar, or having a partner who's doing it with you. So, what's your structure? And then the other thing I wanted to share was during the Las Vegas retreat for the youth pastors, kind of like Ayaka, I had the experience of really relating to father as a grandfather, right? And really getting that he's pretty much like, if I'm speaking to just the first gen for a second, he's like a lot of your adopted dad, right? In terms of, like, what's a dad do? Spend a lot of time with you and makes a huge impact on you, right? And you kind of can learn a lot from your dad or your mom. And it's kind of like that, right? So I got present to that, you know, these guys are like my grandparents in a way. In terms of, I didn't spend too much direct time with them, but they made an impact on the culture I grew up in. The fact that I've been to winter workshops in the winter, and that they made a big difference in my parents' lives. And that's made a huge difference in my life, right? And then the last thing was that during this youth pastor retreat, the whole time we were in small groups of 8 people, and I sat next to this guy, and his face looked familiar at the beginning, and I couldn't tell where he came from. But it turns out he's from Arizona, and NGA, I was on NGA for 2 years, did a workshop with Arizona for the winter, their winter workshop, and it made a huge difference in their workshop. Because NGA, I'm going to give some credit, it puts on some really killer workshops. And this guy remembers me from that. So when I meet him, he's like, yeah, Gene, I remember you from the winter workshop, and he's like, and how old are you? I'm like, oh, I'm 23. He's like, you're 23? Oh, I thought you were a lot older. I'm only 2 years younger than you. And then he looks over to the other Arizona guy, and the other Arizona guy says, yeah, he's 23, what are you talking about? And the guy sitting next to me is like, oh, well, during that winter workshop in Arizona, they were like our hyungs. The NGA, staff were like our hyungs. And so the whole time, even though we're pretty much the same age, this guy is really treating me like I'm an older brother. And it's with such dignity and respect that I just feel really great, right? It brings out the best in me. And it has me think about, how oftentimes we can get in each other's throats and, get, kind of shoot out automatic judging, right? Like this person doesn't do this, and this person's mean, and this person's whatever. But it's it's easier to be like, hey, you do this wrong, or just to passively, aggressively judge people for what they're not doing correctly, right? But when I had the experience of being treated with such honor and respect, it had me elevate to that level where I'm just operating as an older figure, right? Because when you know you're being looked up to, it makes a difference in how you are, right? Who you're being. And so that has me ask the question, where in my life am I not treating people with honor and respect? And where can I put that in? Because that makes a huge difference in, instead of just being judging people, it's just treating people with honor and respect, and that bringing the best out of people. So that's a question. Where can I put that into my life? And that's it.